Long Island medium star Theresa Caputo's ex-husband, Larry Caputo, recently left all of his assets in the names of his children. Theresa was also present during the incident. However, Larry has not yet given any explanation as to why he made this decision. He has only said, "I gave my property, there is nothing for anyone to say here." Larry Caputo sat in his lawyer's office, staring at the stack of documents before him. With a deep breath, he signed the final paper, officially transferring all his assets to his children. The room was silent except for the scratching of the pen against the paper. His ex-wife, Theresa Caputo, sat across from him, her piercing gaze fixed on him, searching for answers he refused to give. Once the papers were signed, Larry leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mr. Caputo, are you sure you don't want to leave anything for Theresa?" Larry's expression didn't change. He looked at Theresa for a long moment before responding in a calm, steady voice. "I gave my property. There is nothing for anyone to say here." Theresa folded her arms, tilting her head slightly. "Larry, I don't care about the money. I just want to know why. Why are you doing this?" Larry didn't answer. Instead, he stood up, adjusting his jacket. The silence between them was thick, filled with years of unspoken words, unresolved emotions, and lingering ghosts of the past. As he turned to leave, Theresa sighed, "You can't run forever, Larry." He paused at the door, but didn't turn around. "I'm not running," he said quietly. "I'm just making sure our kids don't have to." And with that, he walked out, leaving Theresa with more questions than answers. However, Theresa Caputo had faced skeptics her entire life, but none were as stubborn as her own father, Frank. A retired firefighter from Long Island, Frank had always been a man of logic and practicality. He loved his daughter dearly, but her gift, that he struggled to believe in. One evening, Theresa decided it was time to challenge his doubts. She invited him to a small, intimate group reading at her home. Among the attendees were a grieving mother, a widow, and a man who had lost his brother in a tragic accident. Frank sat at the back, arms crossed, skeptical as ever. Theresa took a deep breath and began. "I'm feeling the presence of a strong male figure, someone who wore a uniform," she said, scanning the room. The widow gasped. "My husband was a police officer," she whispered. Theresa nodded, sharing messages that left the woman in tears, comforting words only her late husband could have known. One by one, she connected with spirits, delivering messages so precise that even Frank couldn't dismiss them as coincidences. But then, something unexpected happened. Theresa's expression shifted. She looked directly at her father. "Dad, there's someone here for you." Frank scoffed. "Oh yeah? Who?" She hesitated for a moment, then spoke softly. "Uncle Joe." Frank's face went pale. Uncle Joe was his older brother who had died in a fire decades ago, something Theresa never spoke about. He's saying, "Frankie, stop being so stubborn. I've been trying to get through to you for years." Frank's eyes welled up. "What else is he saying?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Theresa smiled gently. "He says he's proud of you, that you became the man he always believed you would be. And he's sorry for leaving you so soon." A single tear rolled down Frank's cheek. For the first time in his life, he had no words. That night, as they sat together after the reading, Frank finally admitted, "Maybe I've been wrong all these years." Theresa simply took his hand and squeezed it. Sometimes, even the biggest skeptics just need the right message to believe. However, Theresa Caputo sat in her cozy reading room, candles flickering around her. Across from her, a nervous young woman named Emily clutched a faded photograph of a man in a military uniform. Her little brother, Noah, sat beside her, wide-eyed but silent. "Tell me, sweetheart," Theresa said gently, "who are you hoping to connect with?" Emily took a deep breath. "Our father. He passed away before Noel was born. We never got to say goodbye." Theresa nodded, closing her eyes. The air in the room shifted, growing heavier, yet somehow warmer. She inhaled deeply, her fingers tingling as a presence made itself known. "I see a strong man, proud, protective," she murmured. "He's wearing a uniform. He's standing tall, but there's sadness in his eyes. Emily, your father wants you to know he was there when you held Noah for the first time. He saw you whisper to him about Daddy." Emily gasped, tears welling up. "I did. I told him stories about our dad every night." Theresa's expression softened. "He says you did a good job. Noah, he wants you to know something, sweetheart." She turned to the boy who had barely spoken. "He says he's been watching over you your whole life. He was there at your first soccer game, at your school play, even when you were sick and scared." Noah's lips trembled. "I always felt like someone was with me at night, like a hug I couldn't see." Theresa smiled. "That was him. He wants you to know he loves you both so much. And Emily, he says he's proud of the woman you've become." Emily sobbed, clutching Noah close. Does he have any last words?" Theresa took another deep breath. "He says, I never left. I never will. I love you, my stars." Noah's eyes widened. "Stars? He called us his stars?" Emily whispered, "That was his nickname for us." Theresa reached out, squeezing their hands. "He's at peace, but he'll always be with you." The room fell silent, except for the quiet sniffles of the siblings. And for the first time in years, Emily and Noah felt whole again. However, the Intino family gathered in their late mother, Eleanor's, home. The air was thick with sorrow and nostalgia. Eleanor had passed away just a week ago, and now they had the difficult task of sorting through her belongings. Her will had contained an unusual request. "I don't want my things to be kept, donated, or sold. I want them thrown away, no questions asked." Her children, Lisa, Michael, and Anna, were baffled. "She cherished these things," Lisa said, holding a delicate porcelain figurine. "Why would she want us to trash them?" Michael shook his head. "Maybe she didn't want us to hold on to the past." "But it feels wrong," Anna whispered. Conflicted, they decided to seek guidance. Lisa, a firm believer in the afterlife, reached out to Theresa Caputo, the famous Long Island medium. A few days later, they sat in Theresa's cozy reading room, surrounded by candles and photos of loved ones. Theresa closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and after a moment, spoke. "Your mother is here." Lisa gasped. "She says, 'My darlings, don't be sad. I needed you to let go. I held on to too much in life, memories, regrets, old pains. I don't want you burdened the same way. My love isn't in those things. It's in you." Tears streamed down their faces. They had misunderstood her wish. She hadn't been discarding her past. She had been setting them free from it. That evening, as they let go of her possessions, they felt lighter. For the first time since her passing, the weight of grief softened, and in the wind that rustled through the trees, they swore they heard her whisper, "Thank you, my loves." However, Emma sat on the plush couch of a cozy studio, her hands nervously clutching a small silver pendant, the only keepsake she had of her late father. At just 22, she had already made a name for herself as a talented pianist and songwriter, yet something always felt missing. Her father, a musician himself, had passed away before she ever had the chance to play for him. Now, sitting across from the famous medium, Theresa Caputo, she felt both excitement and fear. Could she really connect with him? Theresa tilted her head, closing her eyes briefly. Then she gasped, a smile forming on her lips. "He's here, sweetheart," she said, her Long Island accent warm and comforting. "Oh my God, he's got such a musical soul. He's showing me a guitar, a notebook full of scribbled lyrics, and a little girl tapping on piano keys." Emma's breath hitched. "That's me," she whispered. "I used to sit at his feet while he played." Theresa nodded. "He says he never left your side. He's been watching you, especially when you play. He keeps saying, 'Tell her she's playing my song.' Does that make sense to you?" Tears welled in Emma's eyes. Just last week, she had finished composing a piece using fragments of old melodies her father used to hum. She had named it Dad's Song. "He knows," Theresa confirmed. "And he's proud. He says you have his hands. Your music brings him to life every time you play." Emma let out a shaky laugh, tears streaming down her cheeks. For the first time in years, the emptiness inside her felt a little less heavy. As she left the studio, she clutched the silver pendant tightly, whispering, "Thank you, Dad." And for the first time, she swore she heard a whisper back, "I'm always here, kiddo." However, Theresa sat alone in her cozy Long Island home, the soft hum of the ocean waves barely reaching her through the windows. The house, once filled with laughter, love, and the aroma of Sunday dinners, now felt hollow. The hardest part of her separation wasn't the paperwork, the division of assets, or even explaining it to friends and family. It was the silence. For years, she had built a life with Larry. They had been a team, partners in everything: love, parenting, and even the strange and beautiful world of spirit communication. But somewhere along the way, they had grown apart, their once effortless conversations turning into awkward silences, their connection fading like a whisper in the wind. Now, as she sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee growing cold in her hands, Theresa sighed. She missed the way things used to be, not just with Larry, but with herself. Her gift, the ability to connect with spirits, had always been a blessing, but during the darkest nights, it felt like a curse. She could comfort strangers, bringing them messages of love from the beyond, yet she couldn't seem to find peace in her own heart. One evening, while she was alone in the living room, a sudden chill filled the air. The lights flickered, and a familiar presence made itself known. It wasn't a ghost from someone else's past, it was her own. "Theresa," the voice was soft, almost hesitant. She closed her eyes, tears welling up. It was Larry's father, a spirit she had connected with countless times over the years. "You're not alone," he whispered. "You never were." A sob escaped her lips. "Then why does it feel that way?" "Because you're holding on to the past," the spirit replied. "But your journey isn't over. Love didn't leave. It's just taking a new form." The words settled deep within her soul. She had spent so much time mourning what was lost that she had forgotten to embrace what was ahead. The next morning, Theresa woke up feeling lighter. She still had love in her life, her children, her friends, the countless people she helped every day. And maybe, just maybe, she would find love again in a way she never expected. For the first time in a long while, the silence in her home didn't feel empty. It felt like a new beginning. However, Theresa Caputo, the Long Island medium, had connected with thousands of spirits throughout her career. But one evening, she experienced something unlike anything before, a moment so surreal it would never be aired on television. It all started when Theresa received an anonymous letter. The envelope contained nothing but an old, yellowed photograph of a young woman. On the back, a single sentence was scribbled: "Find me where the light fades." Intrigued, Theresa felt a powerful pull toward Montauk, where the famous lighthouse stood tall against the crashing waves. She drove there alone, feeling an unusual energy in the air. As she reached the base of the lighthouse, the wind howled through the cliffs, whispering words she couldn't quite understand. Closing her eyes, she focused. Instantly, she felt an overwhelming presence, a spirit unlike any she had encountered. Suddenly, the air grew thick, and the outline of a woman appeared before her. "Theresa," the figure whispered. Theresa's breath caught in her throat. "Who are you?" "I am Eleanor," the woman said, her voice echoing like a forgotten song. "I was lost at sea, but my soul never found rest." Theresa felt a shiver run down her spine. The woman's pain was tangible, her sorrow etched in the very air. "How can I help you?" she asked softly. Eleanor pointed toward the horizon, where the last light of the sun was sinking beneath the waves. "Tell them I never meant to leave. My heart remained on the shore." Theresa's eyes welled with tears. She could feel the deep longing of a love story left unfinished. "Who should I tell?" she asked. Before Eleanor could answer, a sudden gust of wind rushed through, and she vanished. At that moment, Theresa noticed something at her feet. A rusted locket with initials engraved, EM and JT. Determined, she spent weeks tracking down records of shipwrecks near Montauk. Finally, she discovered a tragic tale from the early 1900s. Eleanor Moore had been engaged to a sailor named James Thompson. He had waited for her on shore the night she was lost at sea, never knowing what had happened. Theresa found James's great-granddaughter, who had heard family rumors but never knew the full story. As Theresa placed the locket in her hands, a peaceful warmth filled the room. The spirit of Eleanor had finally found closure. And for Theresa Caputo, it was a moment she would never forget. One that would never make it to television, but one that proved love transcends even the veil between life and death. Hello lovely viewers, welcome to my channel. I am Mina. Hope your day is so well. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe the channel.